And you're still watching the AM Show live on this very channel. As always, we're streaming live on YouTube. And if you get to YouTube, please search for our channel, My Joy Online. And let's look at this. October 17 is celebrated worldwide as the International Day for the Eradication of Poverty. And we're going to bring you a story of a young man who is determined to eradicate poverty from his family by using his family inheritance of crop farming and livestock. And this is, we all know, happening at the time majority of his peers are dreaming of working in plush offices, white-collar jobs like ours. And he is determined to get to the top of the socio-economic ladder by just using agriculture. Joy News' Maswala Gbagba tells the story of 27-year-old farmer Gideon Paddy, who is also determined to wipe out poverty from his family for good.
Meet Kwabena Boateng. He's in his mid-30s and started life as a farmer in the village. He quit and moved to the city. I met Kwabena Boateng on the streets of Kotobabi. He says he's comfortable with life as a construction worker. He says never again would he go back to farming, something he considers tedious and cumbersome.
I came from the Mayan Crow, our side. After you hear that some people used to go to Italy, Spain, or that, it's because of farming they used to go. But me, I tried that kind of farming. Now weeding, I weed always say 4 or 5 acres to get something to go to that kind of Libya. But at the time I finished this kind of weeding and sow the maize, now the rain is not falling again. So what should I do? So since I said no, if I came to Accra here, it would be better for me to be staying in village. Because if I Accra here, doing security work and even get 3 million or 2.5 crore, it's better for me to be weeding these 3 months or look at some years before you weed and before you prepare everything. As I'm here now, if I calculate some, as I'm here and at village, even my village, they prefer that I should be here than coming to the village because there's nothing there for me. The weeding, as I'm here, I can't weed again. If you say that a day you give me, let's say, 50 Ghana to weed from here to here, I can't. But I know that the construction work I'm doing every Monday, from Monday to Friday, I get 2.1. From Monday to Friday, I get 2.1. My father is weeding, my mother is weeding, I also weeding. It can't help me. So if I'm here, I think it's better for me.
Agriculture is the mainstay of the Ghanaian economy. But like many other sectors of the economy, it has its own challenges. A cursory glance at the basic school textbook will reveal some of the challenges, from bad roads to post-harvest losses, name them. Today, on the day for the International Day for the Eradication of Poverty, we are here on the streets of Kotobabi to find out from some young people whether agriculture is anything that they would love to venture into. From here, we'll be having interactions with a young Ghanaian farmer, Gideon Paddy, who is braving the odds.
Unlike Kwabena Boateng, Gideon Paddy is in his mid-20s, making a living out of agriculture. He's into cash crop farming and raises livestock to support his farm business at Adeso. At a time where most of his peers only dream of white-collar jobs, Gideon Paddy is determined to turn his family inheritance into gold. Here in the slum of Kotobabi.
So why they go change, oh, they never go change. They never go change, oh, they never go change. They never go change, oh.
Soon, we're in his house close to a huge storm drain. The goat's here started bleating upon seeing him. He grabs the key and goes into a small wooden structure on the compound to get some grated cassava. We sat on one of the uncompleted buildings on the compound where he opened up his heart to me.
How did you get into farming, the business of farming?
It just says Kwekudakun. Akukodakun was one of my mentors. He was into poultry. So back then, GSS, I wanted to go into poultry. But here lies the case, my grandparents had goat.
You're talking about Daku Farms.
Daku Farms. Yeah, Daku Farms. Yeah, Daku Farms. So I wanted to go into poultry, but I didn't know how. So, okay, what do I do now? Okay. So back then I was a graphic designer, and then even the money there wasn't enough for you to be able to be saving to go into agric. So after my grandfather, who was controlling the goods, died. And then when he died, I think nobody was interested in, taking care or turning this story into something else. So I saw an opportunity in it. And then I met some few friends. Someone like John Ama, John Nana Ben Yabuagansa of Food Factory. So they really opened my eyes. And then Dennis, one young farmer in Volta region. So coming, when he saw the goats, he was like, Gideon, do you know this thing is billions of dollars? And I was like, how? He said, sure, this is good. So he started, like opening up certain things to me. The farm in Adesu is about 70 acres. I wasn't so much good in school, as in mathematics, but I really loved agriculture way back in school. And then also growing up with my grandparents, they were into livestock production, they were into goods. So I grew up in a home where we like, my grandparents used to rear goods, they reared goods. And then those days I was the feed boy. I used to go around, soliciting for food for our animals. Yeah, so I picked up certain things there. But I wasn't so much into it because I didn't see the value of what is good. I didn't see the value of goods, or let's say livestock. For me, I call agriculture the Messiah. The reason why I call agriculture the Messiah is agriculture is the savior. It doesn't matter your background. It does not matter your educational background.
Now you're into crop production, young person in your late 20s. What are some of the challenges of farming?
Number one is funding. First of all, I would like to say kudos to the government for bringing up such an initiative. But some of us, we've not, go near that because, we are living in a country where most of our things we do is political affiliated. If you are not affiliated to a political party, you don't get access to such fundings and things.
A lot of the agric that we do here in Ghana, it's not mechanized. So you go to the villages and then people are using hoes and they're using cutlasses and all of that to farm, and that makes the job very tedious and cumbersome. Some people actually say it repels young people from going into, because it doesn't look attractive. What kind of logistics do you have on your farm? I mean, do you have access to the earth moving machines? Do you have access to what kind of logistics do you have on your farm? Or you also do the cutlasses and all of those?
We use the cutlasses and all those stuff, but we do rent some of the tractors, like tractors to help us plow our land and all those stuff.
You hire them?
Yes, we hire them.
How do they come at a huge cost?
Let's say in our district, Adesu, I think renting a tractor, an acre is 120 Ghana cedis. In Adesu, there are a lot of young people there whom should be on the farm, but they themselves, they are now into this Okada business. But this is
why are they now into Okada business?
As you were saying,
because the farming is not lucrative enough.
It's not lucrative enough. They don't find it very lucrative because they don't have access to all these how do you call it, these machines and all those stuff, which will make the work very easy.
So why they go change? Oh, they never go change. They never go change. Oh, they never.
Gideon is not the only young person determined to make it. He took me to a cattle ranch very close to his house and tells me what his peers are also doing to free themselves from the shackles of poverty.
This cattle ranch, I call it urban cattle ranch. It's for some of the young guys around. What they do is they bring together money, they buy cow, they raise them, and then when it is time for the Eid, the biggest one, they sell them and then they make some money. So this place, they do it like it's a crowdfunding. Yeah, so most of the young people, that's what they do around.
So like how many cattle do we have here? Do we have sleeping here? I hear they've gone to graze?
Yeah, they've gone to graze. They have over 100 of them here, 100 cattle, so over 100 cattle here. It's profitable because let's say buying a young calf at 800 Ghana cedi, raising it for a year and then making 2,000. Yeah, it's cool.
So why they go change? Oh, they never.
Every cloud has a silver lining, and Gideon Paddy has found his silver lining in a thick cloud. For Joy News, Maxwell Agbagba.
They never go change. Oh, why they for change?
and my colleague Maswell Agbagba with our very report. And just to give you a gist of what poverty can do and the decisions that poverty can make people take. But it is also to give us a better perspective as to how many of us are living our lives and how we all seek the ambition to improve on the kind of livelihoods that we live. Well, we have to go for a break. When we come back, we'll have a lot more for you on the show. Do stay on. Now, let's look at how we can also make sure we improve on the livelihoods that we have. But it is critical for you always to be getting interactive with us. Join us on TV, it's our page on Facebook. You can have a lot more of the messages or responses to the question we've posed for the day. But let's look at this. Where you live, who your parents and kinsmen are, as well as your telephone number and email address are personal details most of us are required to provide when applying for a passport, bank account, or to also enroll in any institution in our country. But have you ever wondered how insecure such information you give is out there? And the Cybercrime Unit of the Ghana Police Service is a section of the Ghana Police Service, the department on its own, has set the end of October to political parties and organizations like your church, my church, and generally all churches and hospitals involved in the collection of personal data to register under the Data Protection Act or face sanctions. But for you as an individual, do you think about the security implications of the information you put out? Here is Executive Director of the Data Protection Commission, Teki Akwete Falconer, explaining why data protection is important and what you can do in ensuring your data is also protected.
To date, we have registered about 600 data controllers. We continue to engage in a lot of awareness creation to raise the level of awareness among citizens of their rights and to also enable them enforce such rights under the laws. Currently, we have adverts running on Joy FM and some other radio stations. We will soon include documentaries on some national TV stations as well. And we've been doing individualized training for public sector organizations, journalists, political parties, and the like to ensure that, you know, they understand what this law really means and its impact on their work.
Why should anyone be interested in data protection? What does it do for me as an individual?
As an individual, you want your information protected. I believe that is right. You do not want anybody to use your information in a way that you have not sanctioned or authorized that person or organizations to use your information. And that is the reason why data protection is important. It goes to the very core of protecting your dignity. The issues surrounding right to privacy and all of those issues is just about the dignity that you want to retain as an individual.
For example, has this got to do with the information you give to, say, the Electoral Commission when you register the political parties, at the banks, at the telcos, when you register your details with them?
Yes, definitely. I mean, it has to do with any information about an individual or from which an individual can be identified. So it will typically entail things like your name, your address, your telephone number, your residential address, a PO box number, your financial record details, your employment records, your health records, and several other information that we give out about ourselves.
So who is supposed to act to ensure that these elements or the details about individuals are protected? Who's supposed to
protect them?
Typically, what we call the data controller, that is the person who collects your information and decides how that information should be used. So,
for example, your bank.
Exactly. So if you're looking at going to a bank and then being a customer of a bank, then the bank becomes your data controller in that respect. And the law, which is the Data Protection Act, mandates them to maintain certain standards and to comply with certain provisions that will enable them protect your information. A hospital, for instance, that is collecting your information, you already mentioned an organization, a public sector organization like the Electoral Commission that is collecting information on individuals. There's a requirement on how steps they must take also to protect that information. Organization like the National Identification Authority. In fact, almost all public sector organizations that collect information, as well as private organizations, and you can mention several churches, schools, media houses, and several others. Invariably, almost every entity or individual that collects information and puts it to a particular use or decides how that information should be used is involved in that process. And they are mandated by the law to comply with what we call data protection standards or principles.
What are these standards and principles? What are they supposed to do or not do with the information they've collected?
Well, for one, there's a basic principle that says that you need to collect the information with the consent of the individual. Okay, so the parameters for that consent is set out in the law. And so what the law requires is that you respect the standards that have been set to receive that consent. Another thing is that when you receive that consent, first of all, you're supposed to inform the individual whose information you're collecting, the reason why you're taking their information and how you're going to use it. That's also a requirement, which says that if I'm coming to you as a customer and you require that I give you my personal details, there's a mandate for you to tell me, and I have every right to demand that you tell me, what are you taking this information for? How are you going to use it? How long will you keep it for? That is also an obligation under the law. Then there's another obligation that says that, look, you have to protect the information that you're collecting. So there, as a regulator, the Commission comes in to make sure that the standards that you're using to protect the information is adequate. So, for instance, you will not take my financial details, you will not take my health records and just leave it in a room that is not protected, that's not fireproof, that is not locked up, so that anybody at all can walk in and then have access to. If you don't need the information anymore, how do you dispose of the information? So your HR department processes payroll through a particular computer. You want to get rid of the computer. How do you do that? Just selling the computer to somebody is not enough, because it may still have the details of those individuals. The damage that is done to the individual when we do not respect these rights can never be reversed. That's what we found out. So a lot of the time when you're talking about it, it looks as if it is not anything that is serious, until you realize that, look, you live in a community, you have a particular problem that will open you to stigmatization and discrimination, and you share this information in confidence with someone in a particular entity so that they can serve a need that you have. Example, again, a hospital or a church, that can serve a need. And the next thing you find out is that your neighbors and everybody, some people have had to move homes because they could not bear with stigmatization.
So, can I, as an individual, for instance, go to your website and be able to track which organizations have registered?
Oh, yes. When you visit our website, I mean, I could demonstrate here for you. When you visit our website, there's at the bottom column of the website, you have a search the register. So when you click on search register, it brings you to the page where you can type in the name of any organization or individual that you have in mind or you know collects information. When you type the name in, once they are registered, their name will pop up. Yes, if it doesn't show up, then it means they are not registered.
Is the Ghana Police Service registered?
Yes, the Ghana Police Service has been doing a series of registration. Currently, we have the AWAPIS system. I know they are working on the administration as well, and then the other segments.
So what, beyond the advice that people should shun companies that do not comply with this law, what advice would you give them in helping the organizations they deal with to come and do the right thing?
To the organization?
To everybody, to all of us Ghanaians.
Well, what I will say is that it's a very simple process, and it's not very difficult. It's an online process. You can be wherever in Ghana or even outside Ghana, and you will go through the process to comply. So the compliance process is not very difficult, and we've simplified it in such a way that you even learn through the process. So it's very important that we all respect this law. It's very important for us as citizens of this country, that every organization and entity. And what I will say is that if we do not respect, especially as data controllers, we'll realize that the reputational damage that we open ourselves to, as an organization becomes high. It increases our risk, and it increases, the damage. Because let me give you an example again. One time, a company, I was speaking to a CEO of a particular company, and he was a CEO in Europe. And he informed me that as a CEO then in Europe, he had challenges understanding what this whole noise data protection was about until his company was hit by a data protection breach. And he said within minutes of the announcement coming up, they lost more than 90% of their customer base. Because when you don't respect data protection laws, what you're essentially saying is that don't trust me with your information. And who wants to do business, who wants anybody to deal with anybody they cannot trust? So that is it. It's very important that we look to doing the right thing also for this country and for our citizens. Like I said, it's all about us. This law is about respecting us as individuals. And if you, a company, a business, a government entity, want to say that you respect me as a citizen, I think this is the first step to showing it. And we must do that. And for us as citizens, I believe that we have several rights, and everybody is trampling on those rights because we have failed to assert them. And this is also an opportunity to start asking questions. When they're taking your information, you have a right to ask, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to keep it? Are you registered with the Data Protection Commission? Where is your certificate of registration? And then we'll take it from there.
All right. Many thanks to you.
Thank you, too, for coming.
And Fred Smith doing that very interview with the Executive Director for the Data Protection Commission, Teki Akwete Falconer. Now, let's get a lot more insight into how your personal information is protected on the cyberspace. Well, we have to get a lot more of this from Albert Ntwi-Boesiako, who is the founder of eCrime Bureau. And he'll be joining us via Skype. And we'll be speaking to him very soon. Hi, Albert, and how are you?
Hi, good morning to your viewers.
Now, particularly on the subject of data protection in Ghana, how seriously should we be taking it?
Well, I think it's fundamental. The Commission, through the Executive Director, has made a point clear. I was following her submissions here. But let me take you also to the ground. Why the need? As we are speaking, we have several breaches. Systems are being compromised, data is being stolen by insiders, and information are being traded on the internet. So there are serious issues going on. And we need this kind of legislation to protect citizens, I mean individuals, against our personal data being exposed and being, in some cases, it being sold to criminals. That is really what is happening, and that is the need why we need to get data protectors, data controllers and data processors to be able to conform to this legislation.
Well, somebody would say, especially when we're being told that globally the next economic boom is expected to happen on our continent, aren't we too late in the day in putting now the structures for this to be done?
Well, I think probably the commissioner should have given you a bit of overview of the African landscape when it comes to data protection. I think Ghana is doing well. I personally did a research for United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. And I analyzed the development on data protection across West Africa. And Ghana is one of the countries which is doing extremely well in terms of data protection implementation, right? Of course, if you look at the numbers, 600 data controllers who have registered, it's absolutely inadequate. If you look at number of institutions, both public sector and private sector organizations, and we are only talking about 600, we still have a lot to do. However, the information we have is Ghana is doing quite well. If you take South Africa, in our region, I think Ghana comes next in terms of our implementation of data protection legislation and practices.
Currently, we have a lot of institutions taking people's data, taking personal information. It could be banks, hotels, various institutions. Who really will be a lot more responsible for these very information they have if they should be breached in wherever they're keeping them?
Absolutely. Whoever, I think the law makes it very clear, whoever collects the data, of course, in order to provide me a banking service, I need to provide my details to you. My ID information, my email, my phone number, and other additional information that could be my next of kin, right? And then sometime your business registration, the shareholding, there are a lot of information that I have to give out to be able to be offered the service. Now, whoever collects this information has an obligation under the Act to ensure that, one, the information that you have collected is used for the purpose that you have collected. You don't collect information from me as a bank and trade it or give it to somebody else, another company. That is against the law. In addition, the law also asks whoever collects this information to make sure certain safeguards are in place. What do we mean by safeguards? You need to protect your banking network and systems against hacks. Because if your system is hacked and my credit card details are stolen to be traded on the black market, that is going to affect me. It's going to affect my credit standard. So this is what the businesses will need to appreciate to ensure that it is not just registering to collect the data, but the company need to also go beyond that to ensure that whoever has registered, whoever is collecting data within the jurisdiction of Ghana, has put the necessary infrastructure technically in place to make sure.
Oh, very interesting. On the personal level, we now have a lot more information being put on a lot more platforms or machinery by various organizations, especially if you go to the very private sector that we keep talking about. Now, that sort of information that they have and the platforms on which they are, what's the best way by which the organizations in themselves could protect that level of data in itself?
Wow, you mean, are you talking of you putting information on what? Social media?
Well, we'll come to the subject of social media. For example, you have various organizations, just small organizations, or let's say even normal companies. They're putting a lot more information on their personal computers used in the office, and they haven't put in place the systems and the structures that will make sure that if, let's say, they want to have a changeover, they are able to protect the data that are in the machines that they have to raid or get rid of.
Great. That is quite interesting. Look, I think the law doesn't make exceptions in terms of big companies and small companies and organizations. As long as, I think the rule here is as long as you obtain data from someone, it could be just a customer information. Even if you are employing and you collect people's CV, that constitutes personal, I mean, as long as that kind of information constitutes personal details, that is fundamental, and you have an obligation to register. So, almost everybody, if you look at this, definition, it means that almost every registered organization will have to comply with the Act, because when your organization, you trade with people, you trade with customers, you deal with the state agencies, you exchange information, and that put that obligation. Yes, you are right. Assessment is not good in terms of the safeguards and systems that are used to protect data. For example, basic encryption systems to protect the kind of information that we keep them on laptops. We don't have them. And I think that the Commission has a huge challenge to also enhance the public's awareness, the education. They have been doing well. But I recommend that those SMEs and businesses, sometimes they don't really appreciate some of these risks. And I think we need to take the education and awareness closer to them to be able to appreciate the fact that if they allow people's data to be stolen, to be breached, to be exposed, there will not just be possibly monetary consequences, but then it could also lead to criminal cases. And I think they need to be clear on that.
A very, very interesting point you raised there. But let's take, for example, people are now using a lot more softwares that have the main database not in resident even in our country or on the continent. They are somewhere in the cloud, somewhere else. But those breaches, when they happen, they are not in control of. But they are local agencies or local companies or entities taking people's personal information here and there. What happens to those information if they're hacked into or perhaps get breached?
Well, that is an issue being discussed now globally. We call this data localization. For example, we have a Ghanaian citizen, and I have my cloud service being hosted in the US. Where is data residing, right? Even though you are sitting here, and your data is being kept on a server in the US. So that information is protected by Data Protection Act of the US, for example. So yes, that is why the United Nations, for example, has been doing quite a lot of work to ensure that different countries, all countries adopt this legislation and see to their enforcement because of the way e-commerce transactions and international businesses is working on. And I think European Union is coming out with a strong legislation, one of their data protection development, that they wouldn't be able to exchange data with somebody, organization, or an individual who operates in a country without the same kind of level of protection for data. So I think that is an emerging consensus globally to ensure that irrespective of where data resides, they are equally protected by respective national jurisdictions.
Very interesting point you make there, because I know that iPhone users, for example, had their data spreading across the internet because the main database itself was hacked. But let's come to the personal levels on which we're so much, we have so much fixation on social media. We tend to put a lot more of our information on Facebook, on etc., etc. Now, let's get to the point where these very data that we have need to be protected. Who protects them in what way, and how cautious as individuals should we also be?
Okay, that's a dilemma we have on social media. One, when you use Facebook platform to share information, Facebook has got obligation under Data Protection Act of the US or legislations to make sure that the information you have there are protected. But there is one aspect of social media, right? That means the information that you share with your contacts, whoever. So let's assume you've taken a naked picture of yourself, as people do, and you share with somebody else. At this level, the protection goes beyond Facebook protecting your data. It is whoever the individual who has collected that data to be able to protect that. I think the legislation currently doesn't address protection of, at this individual level. Probably the commission would have explained to that, explained to this issue in terms of individually. If I give my data to you, my information, and you leak it out, what will be the consequence? But of course, there are privacy acts and not just the data protection alone. And I think the Criminal Act itself could sometimes even be used if it's established that there's a criminal intent in disclosing information or releasing the data. But that is one of the key things that can be addressed by user awareness about the risks of sharing such sensitive information. And sometimes another danger is you may probably share this information on the internet, and the commission wouldn't be able to even take this information out. They can't. It's become very difficult. Let's say on WhatsApp, you share a leaked video, is posted there, and sometimes you wonder, okay, let me go to the Data Protection Commission to help me remove that content. Let me tell you, the moment you share that information, it's gone, and probably more than 1 million devices are holding them. Practically and technically, it becomes impossible to get those data off the site. And who are you going to, chase to get those things enforced? So preventive measures are quite necessary in terms of the environment that we are operating on the social media. And I think before we click and put some of this information, we've got to be extremely careful. Yeah, there is a limit to the law in terms of data protection, in protecting individuals, in terms of putting our information out there.
Okay. Now, we have to let you go. But the last question, let's say we have the phones. All the time we have phones, right, etc. And we put the information, our pictures, etc. But we say we delete, or even the phone companies or the mobile companies, they've structured the devices in such a way that you can erase, so to speak. The information that we have erased, or the data in there, is it really deleted? Should we be worried?
It's better. All right, you should be worried, absolutely. If you are just trading your used phone for a new one, it is not a best practice anywhere. And I think it's better you warn your viewers that they got to be extremely careful. When you take a picture, for example, and you delete it, deleting means you see the picture and you take it out. It still resides somewhere on the device. And of course, that is what forensic does, to retrieve the information. If, for example, you are a suspect in any criminal act, that is what is picked up. But the danger is not really that. Of course, if you are a law-abiding citizen, I don't think you've got a problem thinking about the police officer seizing your device for examination. But the fact is, we have a culture in Ghana. Sometimes when you get a new device, you end up giving the old one to somebody else, a friend or a brother or whoever. What do we do on this device before we give them out? Sometimes people are also trading. There is a new business model in town. If you are using an old phone, bring it and take a new one. And people are willing and just rushing for this kind of business. However, what they fail to realize is they may be giving out their information. As a matter of fact, we have information where criminals are going around trading off phones, targeting people. So if they get you, that means most of the messages that you send to, the data that you have stored, the images, the videos, if you don't take care, they may end up on social media. And that could be quite embarrassing. And the psychological impact could be huge. is something that we need to avoid. If you want to indeed give your phone out, you need to run it through certain processes. You need to erase. There are specialized systems that are used to clean off. Clean means that everything is gone. There's a technical process. E-Crime Bureau, for example, we do that for businesses and individuals who want to clear up their devices.
Well, thank you very much. We have to end our conversation here, and we've been speaking to the director or the founder of E-Crime Bureau, the director of cybercrime unit of the Ghana Police Service also will be joining us very soon, and we'll have Chief Superintendent Herbert Gustav Yankson, and we'll see how we can also know what the police is doing to ensure data controllers and handlers comply with the law.
Section 56 of Act 843, that is the Data Protection Act 2012. 56 says a person who fails to register as a data controller but processes personal data commits an offense and is liable on summary conviction to a fine of not more than 250 penalty units or to a term of imprisonment of not more than 2 years or both. So should we prosecute them now? This is the penalty, this is the punishment that awaits them.
In terms of money, how much does 200 penalty units translate?
Penalty unit is 12 Ghana cedis. Penalty unit is 12 Ghana cedis.
Times 200.
So times 250, that should be around 3,000 Ghana cedis. But then you see, 3,000 Ghana cedis, but it goes with an imprisonment of 2 years. So this does not, some companies might say we can pay. But then it goes with either of them or both.
I see. So why is it important to have our data protected in the first place?
It is very, very important that we protect data because if it gets into the wrong hands, our privacy it's at stake. So let me give you a typical example. We go to church every day. They ask who are the first timers here. They take some information from you, your name, your email address, possibly where you stay. Just imagine that these churches do not keep this information very well, and it gets to the hands of the criminals. Apart from your home, through your name, they can get onto your Facebook. And Facebook, most of us connect to our families, our spouses, our kids, our associates, our political affiliations. Everything that is about us could be digged. They could dig any information from Facebook or from the internet. So it is very, very important that we protect this information so that it doesn't get into the wrong hands. Every company that processes data, not necessarily your clients alone, your staff, you take so much information from them, even next of kins, their telephone numbers, where they stay. So every organization, it's necessary. The churches, so far as they keep data, they must go and register. So from 1st of November, if you've not registered, we are now going to prosecute you.
And we also stepped out to find out from some of you whether you will consider the security implications of the information you put out on official forms.
I will just put it there. But then deep within me, I'll just be hoping and praying it won't go against me. For the purpose of the document, I need, that's the reason why I'm putting that kind of information about me there.
In a banking system, there's a legal background behind. So if I'm giving an information, it has to be a genuine information I have to give. And I'm secure about it because they've been given a law to abide the banking system. So there's no way my info given to them is going to be leaked somewhere.
Such institutions like the passport office, the banks and all those things, they need that vital information for what we want them to do for us. And then they expect us to trust them. So such institutions, I think they have high security, so I trust that our information won't leak here.
The one I'm sending the information to, I see that person or that institution or organization as a credible institutions who are willing and able to keep information secretly. So with that, I'm very much secure, 100%, and very, very, very much secure with no doubts.
It's a requirement, like in almost everything we do, in filling your forms or in order to attain certain properties or gain admission to school, even with your SIM card where you need to register to be able to make a phone call or to send a text, they require those documents to confirm the identity. So giving it out at that moment, you, the individual, will feel it's because of something. It's because you need something. So it being part of our daily lives, we are tempted to give it out. But it being safe and secured, it's never safe and secure.
So we've been trying as much as possible to pose a lot more of this very information by way of a question to you on our page on Joy News on TV, which is our page on Facebook. And we're getting some interesting responses. We would want to see whether we have some information to the question. How do you feel when someone gives your contact details out without your consent? It's crucial for many of us, because sometimes calls come, who gave you my number? Now, Mark Fish says, I feel normal because the person or caller will have to introduce him or herself before any conversation. That's good though. Sana Muhammad, I feel normal because the person who received it will call or say whatever he wants to say. That's as plainly and simple as he can put it. And that's from Sana. And then we have Seth Kofidan. So, not right content detail is personal and should be treated as such. Israel Otu, I don't care. The information you give me will determine. That is you, the one calling. And Akpene Edem Asinyo, I feel bad at times, but not always, depending on the one the number is given to. Laughing out loud. And Pat Redu says, that's impolite. Nantoma Mahamadu Badim Sugru, I will not be happy about that. Just annoying, according to Stephen Tay, and then somehow bad. But you never know what you may come on your way, or what may come on your way. Okay, Robert Jaka seemed to indicate that you never know some of the good tidings that you will encounter following reception of that very, or receipt of that very call. We'll see how that goes. So we have a lot more of your information on Facebook, and we would also encourage you to give us a lot more of those answers to the response. If your contact number or your detail as to how you could be contacted is given out there, whether on social media or to anybody else, and you receive the call, how would you feel? How would you feel in detail also having your contact details out? We're taking a break. When we come back, we're speaking to the main contenders in the Owutu constituency. We're speaking to representatives of both the NPP and NDC. We want to know how well they've prepared themselves to make sure that, as far as we're concerned, this very election season, they give out the right information and look out for their own constituents. We're taking a break. We'll be right back.